The kind of problems that Bitcoin solves in Africa are massive. They change the entire sphere of how things operate in the ecosystem in Africa here. The fact that Bitcoin in itself is decentralized. So it breaks so many barriers. Even if I do have my own money and I want to spend, I'd need permission from my husband. But with Bitcoin, I don't need my husband to sign off any bank account before I'm able to hold money. Bitcoin creates freedom. I had some issues at home and I had to leave the house. So in 2018, with no job, no money, absolutely nothing to my name, I became homeless.
What are the conditions that the companies say, like, oh, you have to do this, otherwise you cannot come work for us?
All of these people were men, and for all of them, they all wanted sexual favors. Every single one of them wanted sexual favor. I was a single person before I was born, but in order to survive, I had to live with a man, and that is how I brought forth my daughter.
And how big of a step forward is Bitcoin now?
It's a lifeline. It's a life-changing lifeline. Right now, as I sit here, no one can command me on what to do. I have my own finances. I decide what I want to do.
You're from Ghana, and I'm really curious because I never visited the planet, the continent even. How is Africa? How is Ghana doing in the Bitcoin adoption? What are you seeing there? How is it going?
Well, in Africa in general, Bitcoin adoption is evolving. Lots of people are accepting it. I think in Africa, we have about 80% that are aware of Bitcoin, right? So it's evolving. Lots of people are hearing about it. It's the only problem is the adoption and acceptance. That is what Bitfiasi is here to talk about. That is what we're working towards currently. Yeah.
Interesting. And you're working with, what was it, Bitfiasi?
Bitfiasi. It's Bitcoin and then Fiasi.
Bitfiasi. Oh, okay, I get it. What are you doing there?
Well, we are a non-profit organization focused on empowering women in Africa through financial education with a focus on Bitcoin. Our mission is to bridge the gender gap in accessible financial knowledge, providing women with the skills and tools to be able to thrive in the financial evolving landscape. Yeah. The fast-paced evolving landscape. Yeah.
How big of a problem is financial education currently in Africa, especially with women? Like, what are you seeing? Is financial education there, or like how many people know about that? Like, how paint us a picture of like how is financial education and literacy in Africa?
In Africa, or for women in Africa?
Maybe both. Like, maybe it would be interesting to know like how it's in general and how it's like for women especially.
So financial education in Africa is, well, we're still climbing. It's not so up there. Financial education is not so up there, but it's worse even for women in Africa, because even access to education for women in Africa is very, very limited for women, access to education in general. So financial education is, well, sorry, excuse me, 1 minute. 1 minute. Is that?
No worries. Yeah, of course. Okay. Take your time.
Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Oh, forgive me. I'm so sorry about that. I should have alerted them that I was in an interview. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. We are anyways recording it, so it's not live.
Okay.
With that, we can always cut things out. But yeah, like you were, I think, in the middle of the sentence, you just can you can just continue.
We're still, like I said, in everything. Africa is usually behind in everything, so it's the same with financial education. But we're picking up. We're moving up there. Yeah.
Interesting. And is there a big gap between like men and women also in financial education?
A very, very, very big gap. Very, very. Men are more curious in Africa here. Men are allowed to be curious. Men are allowed to explore ideas outside the norm, the normal norms, the general norms. So men are allowed to explore more. So they are able to research more. But for women are very, very restricted when it comes to exploring. Yeah.
What do you mean with allowed? So they're not giving the same access to education?
No, they are not. For women in Africa, access to education, access to a lot of things, access to banking, access to networking, access to a lot of the social economic systems are very, very limited for women in Africa.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. I always ask like that because it's really hard for me to imagine from an Austrian perspective, because here, if you're a woman or a man, it really does not matter that much. You can study everything, you can do everything. Everyone can have a bank account, everyone has access to everything. And I know that's different in Africa,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
so hard for me to imagine just because I never saw it like really, and I only hear it from explanations, but I know it is there. So it's I'm really curious about that. Like, is there like also from law? Can you not open a bank account? Is that like a law in Africa?
Well, it's first of all, it's from the conditioning of the minds of the women. It is something that has been trickled down from generation to generation. So the conditioning of the minds of the women. It has been since time immemorial. Women have been told the place is the kitchen. I mean, corporate work is for men. So you women have to you get married, stay in the kitchen. You know, lots of men had a problem back in the day, and now it's better. But lots of men had a problem back in the day when their wives gave birth to women instead of men because they wanted people who would be able to work, bring money home, and all of that. But for women, they know they're only going to give you away to some man to marry, and that has been how it has been through history, through time, and has been trickled down. So even though it's getting better, we're still fighting we're still advocating for the rights of women here, especially in financial advocacy, in
It's
financial literacy.
it's a slow race, like it's a long
Yeah,
fight.
yeah.
Because you basically have to, the older generations kind of have to die out for the new kind of things and thinking to come in. Is there like a big gap also between younger generation and older generation in terms of how they think and how inclusive they are?
Well, thankfully, majorly to the internet, because of the internet, the world has become a small place. So most people are seeing how the other people, the other side of the world live, how the Westerners are living, they're learning things. But back in the day, we didn't have that. So nurturing was just from your mother. Right? Most fathers were not home to nurture. So nurturing was just from your mother. So the conditioning of your mother's mind is what she nurtures. That is what she trains you with. So that is where you grew up with. But now, because of the internet and because of how small the world has become, people are learning the ways of the other side of the world. So people are realizing, oh, so I can also bank, I can also work, I'm supposed to have access to some of these infrastructures. I'm supposed to be able to start up a business, and people are learning. So people are realizing, the women especially are realizing they have rights and they need to fight for their rights.
How big of a role does the internet play in that empowerment?
A lot, it does a lot, a whole lot.
So it's
The
the
internet has become, it has become sort of a learning space for lots of people. So a lot of people are learning to unlearn what they've been taught and are relearning thanks to the internet. So it has played a huge role, a very, very huge role. Yeah.
I love that. And Bitcoin, how is Bitcoin improving things? Is that just like for the bank accounts and you then are able to transact it, obviously for inflation and stuff like that? But when I usually talk with people in Austria, they're like about around the store of value side of things. They want to have an inflation hedge, but often hear that in countries, continents like Africa, in countries like Ghana, or like even like in
Mhm.
countries like El Salvador or Turkey, there's a different story to that, where we also talk about medium of exchange, where we also talk about the whole other side of Bitcoin. Like how is Bitcoin empowering people in Africa?
Uh, well, aside from inflation, this is what I wanted to say about Bitcoin in Africa. I realized in the Western, lots of people are thinking about trading and investing just to hodl, right? But in Africa, we are not looking to just hodl because the kind of problems that Bitcoin solves in Africa are massive. They change the entire sphere of how things operate in the ecosystem in Africa here. For example, aside from the decentralized. The major thing is the fact that Bitcoin in itself is decentralized. So it breaks so many barriers, especially with the gender bias gap with women. It breaks so many barriers. I mean, it's decentralized, so it means that I don't need permission from anyone to hold Bitcoin, right? Unlike in money, where if say I'm a child and say I'm in a child marriage and I need money, I'd have to go to my husband. Well, even if I do have my own money and I want to spend, I'd need permission from my husband. But with Bitcoin, I don't need my husband to sign off any bank account before I'm able to hold money, right? So its decentralized nature in itself is what's the word? It's a good thing. It decentralized alone is a good thing. And secondly, it facilitates cross-border remittances. I mean, there are lots of people in the diaspora who want to send money to their family members here, and when you go through the usual system, it's very, very expensive. So you find people not sending as much or not wanting to send as regularly. But with Bitcoin, it's cheap. It's cheap to send remittances from cross-border remittances. It's cheap to send that. It's cheap to make payments. Like you said, inflation, it helps against inflation. If you have businesses, for those who have businesses, it becomes a store of value against the inflation. In Africa here, the level of inflation is very, very high. In 2 weeks, in a span of 2 weeks, you could lose your money by 20% due to inflation, right? So if I have a business and I sell a product for, say, I'm going to use the Ghana city. Do you understand the Ghana city? So if I sell a product for, say, 20 cedis, right? And in 2 weeks, it's slashed by 20 cedis. It means that I have lost value. But if I buy and sell in Bitcoin, I don't just, even with its volatility, I don't just make more profits. Even if Bitcoin doesn't move, right, I still maintain the value that at which I bought or sold the product, which is good. Yeah.
Do you need the approval of your husband to sign a transaction on a bank account?
Well, for a lot of women, especially in underserved communities, most women, especially in underserved communities, do not own bank accounts, right? Their husbands own their accounts. Yeah, that's when you go to the urban areas, things are changing. So women are advocating, and women are signing up for bank accounts and all of that, opening bank accounts on their own. But in most rural areas, which is where our attention is for Bitfiasi initiative, it's the challenge is more. Most women are unbanked; they don't have accounts, and their husbands are the ones that they need permissions from in order to be able to either remove, or their husbands will have to go take money from the bank to give to them before they're able to feed their families. Yeah.
That's
And
huge.
and in some situations, especially when you go to the market, there are lots of women who do the hard work. I mean, you go to the market, you see the women selling and buying and all of that. But at the end of the day, most of them have to give the money to their husbands in order to save them in the banks for them, which is very bad, which shouldn't be the case.
Wait, they earn the money, they give it to the husband so he can get it to the bank and under his control.
Yes, under his control. It is
either
that. Yes, it's either that, or for most women, they have to hide them. And if you're not married to a good man and you hide money, you're in problem. You're in trouble if he finds out. It's a big issue.
It's almost like if you want to be really sovereign as a woman in Africa, you have to have Bitcoin and you have to have the guts to do that. It's a big story actually. Like it's something really huge that Bitcoin does for you and for women in Africa.
Bitcoin creates freedom, because if I'm a mother, right, and this is my situation, I give birth to my kids, and say I have 3 kids. I have one gentleman, one boy, and then 2 girls. Now, if I know about Bitcoin, right, and I'm able to teach my children about Bitcoin, I'm able to save, sell, save, invest in Bitcoin, and I'm able to take my children through school. I teach my children Bitcoin. Once we educate women, it trickles down, it creates a ripple effect for the generations to come. So hopefully this whole situation changes. and women are in the future free of all this biases, and they are able to attain financial freedom. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's super important. And I think, how did you actually get started with Bitcoin? How was the journey for you when you first came into Bitcoin? And how was kind of your entry in that scene? How difficult was it also for you with I don't know, if a husband and stuff like that, if there was any challenges?
Well, it's a long story, but I'm going to try to make it short. I came from a comfortable home. So growing up, I didn't really experience the restrictions that most women experience out there in the world. I mean, I went to school. You realize that in secondary school, you realize teachers try to put you in trouble so that they can have access to you. You go to university, and then your lecturers want to fail you so that they can take advantage of you. I mean, I experienced all of that, but I didn't think they were that bad until I completed school. I completed my university, and I was trying to look for a job. I think 12, and out of all the job interviews that I went, I mean, some of them will call you back, some of them will not call you back. 12 of these jobs, 12, not two, not three, not four, 12 of these jobs. I got called back on 12 of these jobs in a particular year, in a span of 1 year, say 6 months to 8 months. And every single one of these people that called me back had a condition to employ me. Every single one of these 12 companies had a condition to employ me. They all wanted something from me. They all wanted to take advantage of me. And one of them that disgusted me the most was when the CEO had, I think he had an appointment letter and said, "This is the appointment letter. This is your name on it. You just need my signature and you know what to do. I mean, I need just one thing and then I'm going to sign it." I got so angry and so disgusted that I walked out. And after that, for some time, I decided that, I'm not going to bother myself to look for a job and all of that. But I mean, you do have to find a living. So you do have to look for a job. Now, fast forward to 2018, I lost my home. I had some issues at home. And of course, my brother was favorited. I had to leave the house. So in 2018, with no job, no money, absolutely nothing to my name, I became homeless. And then I found myself in a community, a very, very, very underserved community. Fast forward 2018, 2019, there was this initiative by the government. They called it NAPCO, the NAPCO initiative, where they employ you, but you're not on permanent basis. And then they give you a stipend. Now I said, good, because I needed a job. So I took it up. And the stipend was the stipend was 700 Ghana cedis, which is about $47 in US dollars, 47 in US dollars. So $47, 700 cedis, very, very small. You would have to borrow for transport money to be able to make it. And at the end of the day, when you're paid and you pay the person back, you get no profits. You don't even break even. And it was difficult. But with a vision that, I mean, in time, you're going to be permanently employed and you're going to get some allowance or some salary was good enough for me. So I decided to go through that struggle. But the first 3 months, people were permanently employed. Now, the reason why they brought the NAPCO was because they said there were no jobs, and so they wanted to train the youth. But 3 months into it, people were permanently employed into positions that they themselves said were not available. And we, the ones who were in there, had to teach them how to do the job. A year later, people were permanently employed. Second year, people were permanent. And so I kept asking myself, why do we have to teach the people they bring in? They are earning more than us. We're taking just about $47. We have to teach them the job. If we are teaching them the job, then it means that we are equally qualified to be given permanent employees and be paid right. But because they wanted cheap labor, they kept people in the underserved communities and kept making them poorer. That is how the system works. So they keep making you poorer, and then the rich people's children, the politicians' children, are being made permanent. They come in, we teach them the job, they sit in the large courts, we do all the job, they get paid, and we get nothing in return, right? And that's what it was. And now, after 3 years, the NAPCO regime was cancelled, and everyone was asked to go home, which means that every single person from the underserved community who came in there did free labor. They didn't get anything out of it. Some of them were in debt. Some marriages broke down because some people could not take care of their families. So a lot of marriages broke down. People lost their homes because they couldn't pay for bills. And now you're canceling the program after 3 years, right? So there was a lot of bitterness. Now, luckily for me, the institution that I was put into, we were kept in there. Of course, for the first 6 months, they still gave us the $47, but after that, we decided to advocate for better pay, and so they increased it for us, which was a quarter of what the permanent people were receiving, but it was better than $47. So I told myself, I can't live like this. This is not how I want my life to be. I have been in a comfortable home before. So when other people in my community were appreciating it so much, it looked like I was being ungrateful, but I knew there was more that could be done, right? So I decided if I could live on $47, then I can equally live on this and still start a business. So I decided to start a business. And the problems with initially I was trying to get startup capital. I went to a couple of banks, but first of all, you're female. There's so much bias in it. The fact that you're female, you can't, you don't have access to collateral, so you're not going to get it. And those who act like they want to help you only want to take advantage of you and not necessarily help you. You understand? So it was a problem for me, but little by little, I kept up with the hustle, and I reconnected with an old friend of mine. We started talking about it. I was telling him about the things that I'd gone through, the problems and all of that. And then I told him about my business and told him how I was struggling in my business. Then he spoke to me. Then he said, well, you can start saving in Bitcoin. I know. I laughed. It was funny. I laughed. I said, what? I mean, I'd heard about Bitcoin, but I never thought that I would be in the Bitcoin space. So the first thing I said was, what? I'm not even rich enough for that. You understand? Then he said, oh, no, you don't need to be rich enough to do Bitcoin. I said, no, but Bitcoin. And at the time, well, I didn't have enough information. So I'm pretty sure that's why at the time I didn't think it was real currency. I thought it was nerd money, So I said, oh no, he's a nerd. He's into tech. So I said, oh, come on. That is not real money. I need real money. He said, well, so he introduced me to it. He educated me on it. He gave me a couple of links to read about. And after I read about it, I said, you know what? It won't take anything from me. I'm already struggling. So why don't I try this? So I started saving just 5% of my earnings in there. So for my business, the little that I make, I put 5% in there. Whenever my allowances come, I put 5% in there. And after a year, I realized, oh my God, my mind was blown. I said, wow. So that was when I began researching. I did more research. I wanted to understand it. How do I make money? How do I started researching about it. And fast forward to last year, early last year, last 2 years, December. It was in 2023, December. So I had moved out of that community and I went to visit a couple of friends that I made in the community. They called me. I told them I was going to pass by in December. So I went there. So I got to the community. I looked back at it. I looked at the experiences that I had had in that community and I cried. I cried so much. I got home. I thought about it so much. I asked myself, these people thought I was reaching for too much, but here I am. What if I'm able to pull them also out of that situation, right? So I called this friend of mine, the one who introduced me to Bitcoin. I told him about it. We had a couple of discussions, and that was when we came up with Bitfiasi. And so it is for females, but most of our attention is going to be on the underserved community so that we can pull them up out of the poverty rate. So that is how Bitfiasi came to be.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that story. And there's so many interesting things and nuggets in there, how Bitcoin is helping. And it's amazing. It's really sad to see how this works of the workers and how you basically completely abused, honestly, as a worker.
Yeah.
You were talking in the beginning of conditions that every employer had. I don't know if maybe I overheard it, but what are those? What was those conditions? As a as a spoiled Austrian, it's always hard to understand because there are so many laws protecting the workers in Austria that it's really hard to imagine like what are the conditions that the companies say like, oh, you have to do this, otherwise you cannot come work for us.
Well, for most, all of these people were men, and for all of them, they all wanted sexual favors. Every single one of them wanted sexual favor. So you called. I came for an interview. You called me back, and you see, it tells you that you're not the only person that was called back. They probably called 6, 7, 10 women to see who would give in, right? And the fact that you give in doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a job. You understand? So they called me back, and all they wanted was sexual favors. So when I refused, obviously, once I've refused, they're going to call the next person, and that's what they do. Now, at the end of the day, even if you give in and they decide not to give you the job, who are you going to report it to? It's your word against theirs. That is the CEO of a company. Who is going to listen to you, right? He's going to say, you came for a job interview and we didn't pick you up, so you're creating stories. Nobody is going to believe you. That is the problem. And the saddest part is your own female counterparts. The little female representation that we have up there will not even believe you. They will talk down on you. They're going to ask questions like, what were you wearing? Didn't you try to flirt with him? You know, they make it look like you are so desperate for a job that you probably threw yourself on him. And that's how it's going to be. So every single one of them that called me wanted sexual favors. And I said no, I went back home unemployed. And the funny thing, there's a funny story. I remember I told my dad kept asking me, are you telling me, back then I had not lost my home. So my dad kept asking me, are you telling me you didn't pass any of the interviews? And then one day I got angry because I didn't want to talk to him about it. One day I got angry and I told him, this and this is what happened. The first question he asked me, how did you dress when you're going? How did you dress when you're going? So even my own father, the first question that comes from his mouth is, how did you dress when you're going? So if from your own home, this is the question they're asking, imagine what other people are going to be asking, right? So you being the victim are rather going to be made the villain in this situation. That is why most of these people keep doing this to the younger girls, because they know that there's no one there to speak out for them.
Oh man, that's wow. I'm speechless. So it's really hard to hear.
It's happening all around. Even back in the university, on 2 occasions, I was failed. I studied economics. I was failed. And I remember I went to, the first time I was failed, I went to the hall to speak to look for the teacher. So I went to the staff hall to speak to the teacher. To the lecturer, when I got there, I told him he failed me. Right. And then he started laughing because prior to that, we had some encounter in the classroom, and he tried to speak to me. And at the time, I didn't know what he was looking for. I remember when I was going to write my exams, once I had finished the first exams and I was going, he came, wanted to give me a lift to my hostel. And I said, oh no, I'm fine. It's just here. I just want to work because I just wrote a paper. And he insisted. I said no. Then I walked. And when I went to write the second one, I remember I was looking on my paper writing. Then I felt someone standing on top of me. So I looked up and he just smiled and said, okay, so now I have your index number. Then he laughed and left. I didn't think anything of it because I didn't think he was going to keep the index number in his head, because we don't use our names, we use our index numbers. So when he failed me, I asked myself, what happened? What happened? It was until I met with him in the department. That was when he started talking that I realized, oh my God, so this gentleman actually kept my index number, failed me purposely so that I would come to him and he would ask me for sexual favors, right? Someone is trying to, oh goodness me. My daughter is here. 1 minute, please. Is it okay? Can I get up? I need to.
Yeah, no
Okay.
worries, no worries. There's no worries.
I got someone watching her, but I think she may have slipped away.
Yeah, kids do that.
Yeah, and to add to it, I didn't want to talk about this, but once she's coming here, I'm going to talk about it. Before I was going, I was a single person before I was going, but in order to survive, I had to live with a man, right? And that is how I brought forth my daughter, right? So if I hadn't been put in that situation, I wouldn't have been so cornered that I would have to produce when I was not ready. You understand? So these are some of the challenges that women go through. I was not going to talk about it, but I mean, since she introduced herself, I decided, okay, that's fine. I'm going to talk about how she came to the world.
And
So like I was saying, he wanted sexual favors from me, and then I said no. It meant that I would have to wait and then redo the paper the next year. Now the next year, the next semester when I was doing the economics E02 econ 002, that paper too, I failed that paper, and I said no, this doesn't make sense. This lecture is different from the other lecture, so why did I fail? And so I went to the department to speak to the lecturer that taught us, only for me to enter the room to realize that he shared an office with the old lecturer. And that is how adamant some of them are. So it means that you convinced your fellow lecturer to fail me just so that I'll come back in there, then you can do whatever it is you want to do to me. I got so mad and threatened to report him. I think that was why he backed down. So that I completed my university, but I still had to wait an entire year to rewrite those two courses before I could graduate. But it was sad, just because I was a woman and some man wanted some sexual favor from me out of nowhere, thinking it was his right. So these are some of the challenges that we go through as women here.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure, it's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. Oh man, it's so sad to hear. To be honest, it's a totally different world that I live in. Obviously, how big of a step forward is Bitcoin now for that? Getting yourself basically a bank in your pocket.
It's a lifeline. It's a life-changing lifeline. Right now, as I say here, no one can command me on what to do. I have my own finances. I decide what I want to do. I mean, and you know, the funny thing with African cultures is that when you're a woman and you go through all these restrictions and you're able to excel, the same family members that let you rot will now come running to you. You understand? So thankfully through Bitcoin, I have been able to reconnect with my family. I have been able to save enough. I've been able to invest enough. My business is thriving. I left the job that I was in because, of course, they didn't want to take they didn't want to pick us as permanent. So I had to leave and concentrate fully on my business, which is thriving. So I'm really doing well. Yeah. Bitcoin has been a game changer for me personally. And I want to pull other women along. Because, in the beginning, growing up in a comfortable home, I didn't think I was ever going to experience these things. But once it's happening around you, there's a day that is going to affect you some way or the other. And it did. So I decided now that I'm in this space, why don't I pull the other women around me up so that we can all move forward together? Then no one has to be left behind to go through all that suffering.
How do you and Bitfiasi help other women in Africa? Like, how does this work?
Well, Bitfiasi is it's mainly an educational initiative. So what we do is we educate women, right, on Bitcoin and and how it can help them change their lives. So we have a couple of programs. We have a couple of programs lined up. We have the Bitcoin for Beginners course. We have the Smart Money Woman course. We have the webinars. We have the webinar series that we do. We have the Bitcoin coding courses that we do. And my most favorites is the community outreach courses, the community outreach that we have. That one is, like I said, it's my favorite. That is where we go to the communities. Like for the other ones, you register to join and then we teach you both online and in person. But the community, with the community outreach, we go to the communities. Then we go discuss with the community members. We go there with donations. We partner with people who are willing to donate. We donate to them, and then we teach. We create a safe space for them to share the experiences, ask questions, and then we teach them Bitcoin.
I love that a lot. It's really cool. What are some of the challenges that you see that come up with educating people around Bitcoin, with trying to help more and more people, especially with women? Are they afraid? What are the challenges that you see there?
Well, the major challenge is the skepticism and fear because of misinformation. In the beginning, when people heard about Bitcoin, a lot of them didn't take the time to educate themselves about it. So some people rushed to invest without knowing what Bitcoin entails, right? And some people lost money. And so bad information travels faster than good information. So because bad news travels fast, people kept saying it's a scam and it's a scam, it's a scam. So you meet women who, especially in underserved communities, women who have literally no idea about any financial education at all, or they have no financial literacy at all. You come to them, you're talking to them about Bitcoin, and yet they don't even understand the money, the fiat money they're holding. They don't even understand what it entails. Right? I mean, they know it has value because it buys so and so for them, it fits their family and all of that. But it's the skepticism and the fear because of the misinformation is wild. Is wild. So that is why we prioritize education. We prioritize education. Transparency is very important. Transparency, community creation. We've created a community where even after you go through our courses, we have a community, a safe space where you can come with your problems. We can assist you. We can link you up to people that have jobs in those areas. It becomes a community where you can rely on for whatever it is you need, a community of women. Because we don't have in the natural design of our ecosystem, we don't have support systems, we don't have mentors. This community we've created forms as a support system for women that have gone through the Bitcoin training. Yeah.
I think role models are super important to have. Someone that you can relate to, and you see them exceeding, and you can basically go on and do that things also. Like if you see someone doing one thing that is scary, you are more inclined to still do it because it takes courage, and a role model can give you that courage to she escaped there, she got up there, so I can also do it. Why should I not do it? So I think that's that mentorship, that role model, that vision, that kind of like light of the end of the tunnel. It's really, really important, I think, for people to get where they should get and where they want to get. I love that.
Yeah. The main reason why, in the beginning when I started Bitfiasi, the first people I approached were my friends, my female friends. I told them about it. And, when you've known someone for so long and they try to, how do I say, they try to start something new, you'll be surprised to see that the people around you are rather going to talk you down, right? So that is what happened. This is what I've discovered, and I want my friends to be a part of it. I spoke to them about it, and they were, they're all skeptical. I said, okay. So you realize that my first cohort was comprised of a lot of strangers. All the women in there were all strangers. They were not people I knew. I put it out there, and then people joined. Women who wanted to learn about Bitcoin joined, right? But in this second cohort that we're about to start, we're starting this very weekend. We're starting the second cohort this very weekend. This second cohort, after the first cohort, after the people around me saw how much of a success it was and how it was helping people in their lives, now they all want to jump on board. So yes, mentorship is very, very important, because even when you have been in a space with certain people and you want to try to mentor them, it's difficult, right? We have very little representation up there in decision-making roles. And so when, as a woman, you want to take it up, the same people around you pull you down. And that is the reason why a lot of women are not able to reach out there. Aside from the men that you have to fight to get there, the women that you're with that are supposed to pull you up are not pulling you up. And that is why I decided I'm not just going to train women. After which I train women, I want to create a community where we can all uplift each other, push people into the decision-making space, the decision-making roles, so that they can advocate for policy change and financial inclusion. And that brings me to the second challenge. You asked me about challenges. I spoke about the first one. I have only two challenges. That is the first one, of course, the skepticism and the fear, because of the conditioning of the minds of the women through time and time, from generation to generation. That has been the first one. And the second one is funding. I mean, of course, funding limits our ability to scale our educational initiatives. And so we're currently working on getting partnership, we're exploring sponsorship, opportunities and all of that. So hopefully we do. I mean, we started just a couple of months ago. It's been 10 months. So hopefully we are able to get some partnerships or some sponsorship, and then we can scale our reach to reach a lot of other women out there.
I love that. Yeah, you definitely need the support and the thing that you can do that. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength to do all those things, to stand up against that. Where do you take that from? Like, where's your motivation coming from? Like, what keeps you fighting?
I'm smiling. Well, I am naturally a very stubborn woman. I am naturally very, very stubborn. In every space that I have been called controversial. Not necessarily in a bad way. And I realized that it made my work even more difficult, because the women I'm supposed to look up to get intimidated by me, right? I speak my mind. I tell it as it is, and I do my job, and then I go. So I have naturally been a very resilient woman. But thankfully, thankfully, I have my mom to thank for that. My mom, I don't want to tell her story necessarily, but my mom has been through certain things that has made her very, very strong. And that is the kind of training that she gave to us. In the beginning, when we were younger, she was very hard on us. I mean, she's still very hard, but we used to think, oh, she's wicked. Oh, my mom, she's wicked. This is all the things she's doing. She's, all of that. But when we grew to a point, we realized that because of the way she trained us, we're able to go toe to toe with the men, right? So my resilience come not just from me, but from my upbringing. So thankfully, my mom, I have my mom to thank for that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's really good to have that role model again, as we
Yeah.
discussed before, and that's great if it's your own mom. Really cool. I have one question, and I think that could be an interesting one that I ask every one of my guests. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Okay. So my life's journey, right? From being in one space and then tasting how the other side lives their life is an inspiration to everyone that hears my story. I'm trying not to get so emotional. That is why I haven't gone deep into my story. But when you listen to my story in depth, you realize that there's so much to take from that, right? You realize that I didn't just cut through. I mean, because for someone like me who didn't grow up with the hardship and all of that, I mean, usually when women who grow up with all of the hardship and all of the problems are the ones that come out resilient. So naturally, I was supposed to be a softie, but because of the training my mom gave me, it's giving me some sort of cushion against the hardness of life. So aside from Bitcoin, you can take my resilience out of my story. You can take the fact that I didn't let the world slow me down. Yes, I was in a marginalized community. Things were not going well. I had to make certain compromises and I ended up giving birth to a child. And one thing that did to me was I didn't know this about motherhood. Um, I used to be, I used to be a talkative, right? I was very, very in depth. I could speak. My English was good and all of that. But once I delivered, I realized I started having, I wouldn't say memory loss, but I started having concentration problems, right? So I would read something and it would take longer than the usual to get it to stick. And it came as a result of childbirth. And I have had to work through that. Now, this is if I had taken up Bitfiasi back in the day, it would have probably been easier than now because now with this problem that I have, I still have to be able to learn, be able to focus, and then be able to teach people who people are in and then empower them. So when I teach the women, I don't just teach them Bitcoin. We teach them resilience. We teach them how to maneuver through the problems that they're going through. We teach them how to solve real life cases. You know, most of our educational materials are tailored towards real life problems. Are tailored towards each woman's unique problem. So once I teach, at the end of the day, most of my educational process is it's interactive and it's engaging. So you get to share your story, you get to ask questions and all of that. So we know what is the issue that you have, what is your problem? How can we solve that problem using Bitcoin? Right? So it's not just about using Bitcoin, but like you said, if you're a child and you're married into a child marriage, right? And I mean, you're older now, of course, but you're still controlled by your husband and now you want to do Bitcoin. It takes a lot of guts. So we teach you how to maneuver your ways through all of these loopholes so that you can financially be free.
That's so important. I think that's
Yeah.
the mindset behind that, and the ability to maneuver through the things is way more important than just like why Bitcoin and why do you need it and how do you use it. Those things you will figure out if you have the strength and you have the right mindset. I love that approach. Really cool. I have to check out the program and what you're doing with
Yeah.
Bitfiasi close. I think that's really cool what you're doing there.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been just 10 months, but we've been able to reach 600 women. Because of funding issues, I had to hop on Max 24 TV. Max 24 TV was going to schools, educating schools. I think it was a breast cancer advocate, right? But I decided to join them and then teach them financial literacy because these were secondary school people and you have to start small, right? So I joined Max TV. We went to several schools and I taught a lot of women. I was able to pull them into the community. So we've been able to reach 600 women, not just the people we taught out there, but people we've been able to bring in as a community. We've been able to reach 600 women. My Bitcoin for beginners course, we graduated 16 graduates this very November, 30th November, this 2024 and we're starting the next one on Saturday. So sorry, on Thursday. So it's on Thursday and Saturday. because most of these people are mothers, some of them are mothers, some of them have to work and all of that. So we have 2 dates in a week so that they can push their timeline, their schedule to fit whichever one that works for them. So
But that's great to hear. And 600 women is extremely impressive. Like that takes a lot of conversations, a lot of things that has to happen to facilitate that many in just like under a year. That's impressive. Like, congratulations.
Thank you. And without any outside funding, I must add,
That's even more impressive.
it's not been an easy journey, but the vision is bigger than what do I say? The vision is bigger than the currency. So yeah, that's what it took.
I love that. I think that episode of ours here is really inspirational for everyone that is kind of struggling along the way and want to push through something. I love what your story and what you're doing in Africa. We have a end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the question is today for you: how can you help your fellow Bitcoiners drive Bitcoin adoption best? I think that's a great question for you.
How can you?
How can you or someone help other Bitcoiners drive Bitcoin adoption the best way?
Drive Bitcoin adoption. Oh, okay. Well, the first thing should be education, right? I am so adamant on education because that is the best way to reach people. Education. And then, so you educate people, you have to give them real life solutions, right? Now, in Africa here, I don't know about the Western world. I know the Western world, people just like to huddle, but in Africa here, huddling is not the best way to move forward. Adoption and accepting and adoption and using it as a currency is what works here because of the way our system is made. So when you give real life solutions, right, you give real life instances where people have been able to use Bitcoin in their real life situations, and you give them scenarios where it has helped them. People are able to relate more with it and adopt and accept it more than when you just teach them, okay, this is Bitcoin and it does this and it does that and it does that. So yeah, of course, online campaigns are there. You can use online campaigns. You can use daily solutions. You can, well, like what we do in Bitfiasi, we tailor it to our educational content to fit the individual specific needs. So that drives it more than just talking about Bitcoin and what Bitcoin does, right? So that is how best I think Bitcoin will be able to drive Bitcoin adoption by teaching people, tailoring it to their solution, their real life solution, and teaching them how Bitcoin can solve their day-to-day problems. Yeah, I think that is how Bitcoin can solve adoption can be, driven.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I like it. Perfect. Then thank you so much already, Sena, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you personally, and where can people find Bitfiasi to check out more of that?
Okay, so it's simple. It's bitfiasi.org, www.bitfiasi.org. I'm going to spell Bitfiasi. Bitfiasi is BITFIASI. So www.bitfiasi.org. And once you put that in there in Google, anywhere, whatever search engine you're going to get, the website is going to open for you, and then you can explore all the options we have in there. And the meaning of Bitfiasi is it's an Ewe name. I'm an Ewe, so it's an Ewe name. Bitcoin, Bit is of course Bitcoin. Fia in Ewe means royalty, right? So it means royalty, and then Si means female or a woman. So Bitfiasi means Bitcoin royal female. So that is what it means. So it's BITFIASI. So www.bitfiasi.org. You can find us on all social medias. It's just Bitfiasi at Bitfiasi everywhere. On Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, we have a YouTube page. we're on TikTok, we're everywhere on social media.
Perfect. So people check it out. It's really cool. Thank you so much, Sena, for being on my show. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.